This week's podcast covers a variety of questions. From a horse that's terrified of going into a barn, a 4-year-old warm blood struggling with the hind end release, a horse that chomps on a bit, and another that bucks into the canter. I'm Jenny Langley, and with me is Mark Langley. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. Mark, let's start with the first question on a horse that is bucking into the canter transition. It's a question that comes from Maya, who attended one of your clinics recently, and she said that you identified his horse as a pressure release seeker. Can you just explain what a pressure release seeker is, please?
So I guess the horse is inspired by pressure to seek release, and then they worry about the pressure. Because in the basic model of negative reinforcement, we create a stimulant through pressure and we mark the right behaviour in the horse by releasing the pressure. Now, if the pressure made the horse feel quite troubled and then the release, it did something and we took the pressure away, it goes, if I do that, they'll take the pressure away. So then they become a release hunter. But because they don't ever feel comfortable with the pressure, they can't cope when the pressure stays there. They need release. So they're not very good at following a feel. They want the pressure to go away and have that space of no pressure. So they become,
So they're focused. So the drive behind them doing something is to get that pressure off them, which you see as a negative thing because they're not comfortable with it, effectively.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
I really try and say to people, just because every trainer says horses learn through the release of pressure doesn't mean, the horses search for the application of pressure, and at the end of the day, we want them to follow the path of least resistance, not just hunt release.
Okay, so this horse is hunting release, so we know it's not happy about something, but it's bucking. So she says when she's doing canter transitions in the past, it's bucked 50% of the time of doing those. You sound like an incredible rider. I know you said you use it on CTG, but I can't believe you keep going. So an example is that she cantered him really recently on a loose rein on the right lead. She changed to the left lead canter just after the transition. He bucked her off. She got back on again, amazing person, and cantered, but it wasn't on a this time. He tried to buck again, head down. She says it always seems to be on the left canter lead. She's trying with her hands soft and not to confuse him in any way. Still the same thing. So she's looking for suggestions and she's obviously starting to lose her confidence. I'm not surprised. Bucking at the canter transition, is that something fixable? What are your suggestions on that one?
If there's nothing wrong pain-wise, okay, firstly I have to mention that.
Spinal
body, anything, a crookedness in him that's causing a nerve twinge, whatever, you have to look into things like that, would be likely. But a lot of causes is, so if a horse is bucking one way or the other, not one way but the other, but I'd say if you buck 50% of the time, he was bucking on both leads at some point. The few things I'll go through quickly to get you to sort of think about is, one, how well does he respond to leg pressure? He's got to be very happy at pushing forward to leg pressure really nicely, and if you're having trouble with that, go back to a belly rope, put a belly rope on him, get him sensitive first in the belly rope, and then, if you can get a long belly rope and put him out on us, use the belly rope for your forward transitions until you can sort of walk, trot and find a canter through the squeeze of the belly rope. You have to really feel that squeeze on that belly rope and push it forward and get him to come forward, so he's coming forward to a feel of a belly rope until you can go back from it, to a slow jog to a canter, almost to a walk to canter through a belly rope. That'll really help him with that rib cage pressure at pushing forward. And usually a lot of times it's anxiety in the ribs that cause a lot of bucking and having that pressure around them like that. So the belly rope can really sort of help that a lot. So instead of just getting canter leads or canter transitions on a lunge, you're doing it on a lunge from the belly rope, not driving him forward, and that'll sort of help a lot. The other thing is, those walk transitions, really use your lower leg in your walk transition. And I want to walk slow, I want to walk a little faster, I want to go from a standstill to a fast walk instantly, and you be okay with it. I'd like to see if you can go from a standstill to a jog instantly, and you're okay just through the squeeze of my legs, not through my seat, just the squeeze of my legs. So I know you're really comfortable with my legs. And can I get you to go from a standstill to a fast trot with my legs? And get that really pushing off and feeling okay about pushing off from your legs. It might take you a while to get that. The other thing is steering. Make sure when you're trotting him, and maybe spend a fair bit of time trotting until he's truly loose. When you're trotting him, make sure that when you pick up a left rein, he flicks an ear and he thinks left instantly. There's no resistance. There's no pushing right. There's no I don't like looking at you with my right, left, right, until he can trot a tighter turn and just float to the left and float to the right. Make sure that he's floating very nicely on those reins, and there's no worry, no anxiety, no I don't like losing you with one eye and I don't like bending at speed, because that's going to be an indicator there's a bit of fear that's causing the buck when he goes forward. And is he very comfortable with you down both sides and he doesn't avoid you in one eye or the other? Is he steering very centered and perfect in the sense that no bias? If that steering's biased along the way, any parts, and there's a feeling that he's, does he have one hind leg that's harder to pick up and he scoots away a bit? All those little things are indicators that there's one side of his body that has trouble with you there versus the other. If there's any of that in him, that's going to cause a bias on the canter lead when he bucks, because it's kind of, the horse will bolt going left, not right, or right, not left, depending if it loses you on one eye or the other and it needs you on that eye. So those indicators are, you look for those things as well. But, when that accelerator is good, you get to a point you can squeeze him to canter from that walk instead of, but it has to be working. If you do a bit with the belly rope too, you might just sort of improve that and maybe fast track that leg transition a bit more.
So there are belly rope videos for you out there, and I can see you've got the long range, so you'll be able to use those. Okay, staying for horses that are under saddle, this question comes from Carla from Germany. She has the hyper-flexible 4-year-old warm blood that still struggles with hind end release. She's doing the movement correctly while under saddle, but she's wondering, perhaps is he struggling because of his lack of strength? It does feel like he's going to fall over. Or would it be a lack of willingness to let go of a thought? She didn't know if she should first avoid riding him because of this. It feels like she's asking for something he's not quite able to do and setting him up for being very uncomfortable with what she's asking. Could she try it on the ground? Would that be a way?
Right on the ground. The few things you want if you've got one of those hyper flexible horses, which I'm guessing his neck is very snaky and his head will come all the way around your boot, then he just gets stuck not wanting to release the body. So basically, really being able to back him up amazingly. And when you back him up, just in hand on the ground first, like pick up underneath his chin, lift and back, and make sure he's lifting off the feel and backing up. So teaching the elevated rein means lift up and back up, so he's not planting those front feet. And it's the planting of the front feet and the flexing of the neck that causes them to be kind of feel like real snaky and not able to move and like they're going to fall over. So lift and back and lift and back and lift and back until he's really floaty, and under saddle, lift and back and try and just work on a really good back up. If he's that flexible, that once you've got a nice back up in him, you can actually sort of have other ways you can help him release the hindquarter. And then when you're teaching him his groundwork, lift, push him over till the wither lifts and floats over and he's elevated in the wither, and then you put that twist that would be the twist that would be the one that goes towards the belly button, but it's a subtle twist when you're on the ground, and that'll help him release the hindquarter. But make sure he's in flow when you release the hindquarter and he's lifted the wither and the front feet are mobile, because once those front feet are mobile and he's elevated a little bit, he's going to be able to easily start to move that hindquarter. Okay, so if he just flexes and his front feet are jammed down, then you'll have trouble. So some people sort of flex their horse's head all the way around and they bump the horse's hip over with a stick, but sometimes all that does is jam up the front and move the hind over and keep the head super flexible, so they still get stuck under saddle. And if you've got that working, then when you're walking him, you might teach him to, lift and back up when you're riding him. And then something I teach horses as well is a one rein back up, where I kind of block them a little bit on the neck and I try and encourage them to back up. But if he's got to get a pretty good back up before you do this, otherwise he'll probably just flex around. And one rein backup teaches the horse a bit more range of opposition. So that's drawing opposing forward. A rein of opposition is opposing forward. So you can have a direct rein of opposition or an indirect rein of opposition. So an indirect rein would move the wither over. An indirect rein of opposition would start to move the hind over and slow the horse into a hindquarter yield. So when they feel a little bit of opposition on the rein, it slows them down a little bit. So if you want to do a hindquarter yield, you might have him at a walk, and then you bend him and get a bend on him, but then quickly draw that rein back in towards your belly button. And if he's done a little bit of one rein backing, he'll bend and he'll feel that opposition and he'll start to, I might step my hip over, opposed to just crash the front and bed the end around. Especially if he's done quite a bit of backing and he's getting more supple at that backup. That'll sort of help him. Sometimes you can just stay in there and hold. I've done it. I've felt like they're going to fall over. But if it feels like he really is going to fall over, you've got to be careful. But there are horses that I've held and I've just kept lifting and kind of rocking until they've broken free in the feet. Because if you bend them around and then release and reward, they learn to just do lateral flexion.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Mark, it's for Marja in Canada, and she's got a horse that's absolutely petrified of a barn. It's a really small barn, but this is a horse that has possibly had some bad handling that may have possibly created some anxiety associated with the barn. We're not quite sure. But in groundwork, I've just found that she is extremely sensitive to and probably scared of driving pressure, but she's responding well to training. She has access to a very small barn where there's not enough room for a horse, where there's room enough for a horse to stand and get tacked up, but not much more than that. To try to take her into that particular space, it felt like she was going to bolt. So she just got her out of there pretty quickly. She doesn't think it's related to a small dark place because she seems fine in a trailer. Marja would like to know what would be the best way to help with this particular issue. She'd like to sort of fix it, and she's not worried there's no rush on it. But yeah, she's fine as long as she's not in the barn. She just like to help deal with that particular area.
Okay, so something that comes to mind first for me is scared of driving pressure, tight place, okay, but not scared in a float. So because of habit and the horse going in a trailer or float, they know that they go in the trailer and the human goes out and goes in the car, so there's no human in the float. So how can you chase a horse when you're not in the float? So a horse won't go into a cave with a line. Bad idea. A horse out in the flats and the open country with a line feels like there's room to move away. So in driving pressure, a horse can move away from the driving pressure and create space from the driving pressure. So a horse that's paranoid of driving pressure knows that when it's in the open, it's got space to move away if that possible danger arises of driving pressure. When you join that horse in a tight space, there's no room to move away in case driving pressure was presented. Now, you may not drive the horse in that tight space, but maybe the horse doesn't know that yet. My first thoughts on why it's scared in a tight space with a person. It'd be interesting to do an experiment to sort of put some hay in that tight space and go off and have a cup of tea somewhere else and have a little camera in there or your phone in there. Come back and watch if the horse relaxes when you're not in there and gets tighter when you're in there. And that will be an indicator that the driving pressure paranoia is the cause for the feeling of no safety in a tight space. So that would mean I would work on lessons like I'm walking up to you with energy, touching and going, and I'd be a busy person and I'd touch the horse and I'd leave, and I'd touch the horse and leave. And there's plenty of videos on me doing lessons, and some people think this is a bit of flooding, but at the end of the day, it's touch and go until the horse goes up. You don't drive, and then when you get better at your leading skills and you're not driving the horse, then maybe being in a tight space with you is not going to be so terrifying. So that would be my first port of call to think about. Rectify the driving pressure paranoia and then see how she's in tight spaces. Otherwise, treat the tight space as teaching a young horse to go on a float is go in a bit, go out a bit, go in a bit, go out a bit, go in a bit, go out a bit, and also get her to learn to back through sort of tighter spaces where she's got to think about going through obstacles so she can go in reverse through, so she's using the back of her eyes. And yeah, so graded exposure into the tight space and make sure that you've taken her in, you've taken her out before she gets too stressed and it was her idea to go out. Exactly the same as leading a young horse into a float, and see if that helps. But I have a gut feel that there's something about being with a tiger in a tight space that might be causing more of the worry.
So if she's been sort of put on the plate before in a way that it's been driven driven onto a float. You know how they sort of get worked outside, but then they can go inside as a refuge. Does that tend to lead to them having problems with floating, not as in not liking the trailer?
Oh, so in the trailer, if people made it hard outside the trailer and made it easy inside by just taking the pressure off the trailer, the horse is seeking refuge to go in the trailer. If they haven't done it in the right way, there are ways you can create search in a horse and just do something that creates search until it searches and goes into the trailer. And I know good horse people that have sat on a chair and used a flag to get a horse to walk into a trailer. They were just directing the horse's thoughts. But a lot of people are sort of, working the horse in circles, sideways, things like that. And the trailer becomes the refuge from the education. And that's why I really don't like that type, if people do it like that, is because the horse is seeking refuge in a tight space away from the person and their education, which means the horse is going, I don't like you and your education, I'm going to hide somewhere that's very foreign from me, but it's better than being with you. So that's why it's really negative feeling. So the horse may not like the float, but it's like they'll eventually find safety anywhere if that feeling is bad enough outside. So they never quite get used to the float. They just thought that was the less of an evil. But if you get a horse to softly process a float and search into the float and do it right, the horse fully confidently walks into the float and still trusts you, still trusts your pressure and all those things.
Okay, we'll stick with floating for the next question. It's from Megan from Australia. She's got a fairly new addition to her herd. It's a 3-year-old gelding. You have actually met him. He's a little bit annoying to the other horses in the herd, although he's working through those herd dynamics. Things are starting to settle down. Megan's question is around floating. She'd like to know if it's a good idea or a bad idea to float this young gelding with the other horses that he annoys. She can do it with a stallion divider, so there's no way he can get to them and annoy them. But she's just wondering what the pros and cons might be, if there's a green light sign that you would advise of that would let her know that, this is a good time to start to introduce dual floating. Would you recommend, for example, short trips or longer trips?
Sometimes if he gets annoying when he's anxious, he could be annoying in the float, but sometimes the float will make him a little bit concerned enough. He's got enough problems to think about to not annoy the other horse. So it's one of those things, if it was me, I'd probably give it a go with another horse, as long as the horse you put in there is not a horse that's fragile around him. You don't want to sort of have you want a fairly strong sort of member of the herd that's not going to be too bothered, that's not scared of floats, to go with him and just see what happens. And he might pester, or he might just got to get on with the job and try and keep his balance and things like that. The main thing is when you load him is make sure you do a good job of making sure he's not like, the caution curiosity. He's the horse that suffers from too much curiosity, not enough caution, and that's what, curiosity killed the cat sort of thing. So when he goes in, make sure you've got him soft and supple and he loaded in a good mindset. And that's the hardest thing, is getting that good mindset when they load that's got the right amount of caution and curiosity. So when he's gone in, he's not in that diddly-widdly-fiddly mindset. If he's in the diddly-widdly-fiddly mindset, then he's just going to be annoying. He's going to stomp the float. He's going to do all sorts of things. And just on this recent clinic here, I've got a horse kind of similar to him, a big Palomino, who has got blemishes all over him because he has 3 other horses and they're kind of ex-race horses. So it's like, he hasn't had a proper herd to really, or even a proper upbringing in the past to really show him clear boundaries and caution. So he goes in every day, gets a bite, and deals with it, but it doesn't really teach him anything. So he's one of those horses that I call diddly-widdly-fiddly. They just, they're curious. They come up to you without caution. They go up to another horse without caution. They're gazing off at all the things that are going on. If they're like that in the float, then they can start other behaviours, and that's what you've got to be careful of. He'll start it on his own. If he doesn't start it on his own, he'll start it with the other horse. And if the other horse is a fragile loader, he'll stress the other horse because of his things that he's doing, like banging the float or stuff like that. So that's why I say confident horse with him. You don't want to undo another horse's confidence by having him going a bit sort of noodly in there. The horse that I was talking about is a bit animated in his front feet, so he comes up to you in the paddock, but then when you start to guide him, he sometimes wants to strike out and stuff. And I said, things like this, he'll be starting to bang the float when you stop and stuff like that. And she said, yeah, he's just started to do that. And I thought, yeah, because he's in the float in that frame of mind where he's just like, bang, bang, bang. I just do what I think when I think it, and there's no action consequence. So So yeah, if you can really focus on that young one getting a good mindset when you go in before you sort of put the other horse in, that'd be good. Put a good strong horse in there and put the stallion divider up just so he's not nipping and biting and annoying the other horse, because you don't want him to learn that he can create these little scenarios in the float where there's, all this nipping and fiddling and stuff.
That's it for this week. Thank you to all of our online members who have provided these fantastic questions for us. We'll be back next week answering some more for you. In the meantime, have a great week. Stay safe. Thanks for listening to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast. This episode is one of hundreds more. So if you are interested in learning all about how Mark trains and changes horses' mindsets, listen to another. They are packed with practical insights that everyone can use.